We spent $10 billion building the most powerful eye in human history, not to discover something new, to confirm what we already knew. That was the plan. That was the promise. And then the first images came back. In May of 2024, James Webb spotted something that the people who built it cannot explain. A galaxy, fully formed, enormous, hundreds of millions of times heavier than our sun, sitting there in the data like a closed fist. And here is the problem. It existed just 290 million years after the Big Bang. 290 million years. The universe at that point was barely an infant. There should have been nothing but hydrogen, darkness, and time. No stars old enough to have died. No elements complex enough to build anything real. Just empty space doing nothing. Slowly. But there it was. You are sitting there right now with a reasonable amount of trust in science. You should. It built the telescope. It put the telescope in space. It aimed it at the oldest light we can see. And the telescope looked back and said, "Your timeline is wrong. Not slightly wrong. Not a rounding error. The kind of wrong that means we have been teaching the wrong story in every classroom on Earth for 50 years, while we were busy being very confident about it. That galaxy should not exist. The physics we rely on says it cannot exist. And yet, the most expensive scientific instrument ever built looked directly at it and confirmed it is real. 7 discoveries. 7 times the telescope built to confirm our understanding broke it instead. We begin now. The galaxy has a name. JWST-GS-Z14-0. I know, a terrible name, but focus on that Z14 part. That is the redshift number. And what it tells us is that we are seeing this object as it existed just 290 million years after everything began. Not 290 million years ago, 290 million years into the entire existence of time. The universe was younger then some individual stars alive today are old. And sitting inside that infant universe, fully assembled, was this. So let's make this concrete. Not abstract, not physics class distant. Concrete. You want to build a skyscraper. Steel, glass, foundation, 50 floors. Under the best conditions, with the best crews, with unlimited funding, that takes 2 to 4 years. Now imagine someone tells you it has to be done in 5 minutes. Not faster, not rushed. 5 minutes. From empty lot to completed structure. You would say that is not a faster version of construction. That is a different category of thing entirely. That is not how buildings work. That is what JWST-GS-Z14-0 is telling us about galaxies. Because a galaxy is not just mass. It is not just a number on a scale. Building one requires gas clouds to collapse, stars to ignite, those stars to burn for millions of years, then to die, then the debris to coalesce into the next generation, over and over. A galaxy with hundreds of millions of solar masses is the output of an almost incomprehensibly long process of accumulation. And yet, here it is, fully assembled, in a window of time where the process should barely have started. But here is where it stops being about size. Here is where it gets worse. And when the James Webb Telescope looked at JWST-GS-Z14-0, it did not just measure how big it was. It read the chemistry. It looked at what the galaxy was actually made of. And it found carbon. It found oxygen. That is the sentence that breaks everything. The Big Bang produced 2 elements, hydrogen and helium. That is the entire inheritance of the early universe. 2 elements, everything heavier than that, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron. Every single one of those had to be manufactured, and the only factory in the universe that makes them is the inside of a star. Specifically, a star that has lived long enough, burned hot enough, and then died violently enough to scatter those elements outward. You cannot rush that. It is a slow generational process where a star has to form, a burn for millions of years to crush hydrogen into new elements, and then it has to die and explode to scatter those ingredients out into the galaxy so that the next generation of stars and planets can use them. One generation is not enough. You need several. Stars building on the wreckage of earlier stars. Think about where that leaves us. If JWST-GS-Z14-0 has carbon and oxygen at 290 million years after the Big Bang, then entire generations of stars had already lived and died before that moment. Stars that formed, burned, exploded, and seeded the galaxy with heavy elements. All of it. Inside a window of time that our best models said was empty darkness. Walk into a house, brand new construction. The paint is still wet. The concrete still smells like it was poured yesterday. And sitting in the middle of the living room is an antique chair. Not a replica, an original, 100 years old, worn smooth at the armrests. You know the house is new. You can smell it. So where did the chair come from? That is the chemical signature of JWST-GS-Z14-0. The house is brand new. The chair is ancient. Someone or something put it there, and we cannot explain how. Sit with that for a moment, because it is not a small problem. It is not a gap in a dataset. It is proof that before the moment we can currently see, before 290 million years, enough had already happened to produce multiple generations of stellar life and death in a period that 50 years of consensus told us was the cosmic dark ages. 400 million years of nothing. Pitch black. No stars, no light, no chemistry. Yet for 50 years, practically every astronomer agreed on this. Textbooks were written, curricula were built, the dark ages were settled. The universe needed 400 million years just to turn the lights on for the first time. The lights were already on, and we did not know. We had no idea. We were teaching the darkness as fact while a galaxy packed with the chemistry of multiple dead stellar generations was sitting there waiting for us to look. We do not know how it formed. Nobody knows. The honest answer from the people who study this for a living is that our models do not produce this. The standard picture of how structure grows in the universe, how gas collapses, how stars ignite, how galaxies accumulate mass, that picture cannot generate JADES-GS-Z14-0 in the time available. Yet it cannot build the skyscraper in 5 minutes. It cannot explain the antique chair. So the question hanging in the room right now is not just how do we explain one galaxy? The question is, if the dark ages were not dark, if the chemistry was already there, if stars had already lived and died in what should have been empty space, what else did we get wrong? Start there, because that question is not just philosophical, it is structural. The dark ages being false does not just mean one galaxy surprised us. It means the scaffolding we built the entire theory on, the sequence of events we said had to happen in a specific order, that sequence is broken, and breaking the sequence breaks everything downstream of it. Here is how it was supposed to work. In the standard model, the universe starts with hydrogen and helium and darkness. And the first thing that organizes the chaos is dark matter, not regular matter, not stars, not galaxies. Dark matter, invisible, only detectable by gravity, was supposed to form massive webs first, cosmic scaffolding, spread across billions of light years, pulling ordinary matter into its framework, gravity funneling gas into the right places. Only then, after the structure was in place, was normal matter supposed to follow. Stars would ignite inside those halos. Galaxies would accumulate along those threads. Normal matter needed dark matter to build the framework first. That was the story. That was the order. JADES-GS-Z14-0 didn't wait. At 290 million years, the dark matter scaffolding should barely have started. The web should still be thin, fragile, unfinished. And yet, there is a galaxy sitting in it that is not just large but chemically ancient. A galaxy that looks like it skipped the waiting period entirely and built itself. Normal matter assembling into something enormous before the framework was ready to receive it. That is not a surprise. That is normal matter going rogue, and the model cannot absorb that. So you start asking the obvious question, the desperate question, the one that feels like it should fix everything. What if the universe is simply older than we think? What if 13 billion years is wrong? A physicist named Rajendra Gupta asked exactly that, and he came up with an answer. His answer is 26 billion years, not 13. Double. He looked at the data coming from telescopes like JWST and said, maybe the reason the galaxies are too old, is too big, too chemically complex, maybe the reason the dark ages weren't dark, is that we have been miscounting. The universe isn't running out of time to produce these things. We just started the clock at the wrong point, and for about 4 seconds, that feels like relief. Then you follow it to where it goes. If the universe is 26 billion years old, that number did not appear from nowhere. It was derived by adjusting measurements that the entire cosmological model depends on. Measurements that tell us how fast space is expanding, how far away objects actually are, and what the fundamental constants of physics are doing over time. Gupta's 26 billion years requires those constants to change, not by a rounding error, fundamentally, over time, which means the universe is not just older, yet it means physics was different. It means the equations we use to describe reality, equations that are currently embedded in every GPS satellite orbiting your planet, every particle accelerator ever built, every model of how the sun will die. Those equations only work if the numbers in them stay fixed. Gupta's fix requires them to drift. That is not a small adjustment to a textbook. That is a different universe. And it gets worse, because the 26 billion years also destroys dark energy. Dark energy is the name we gave to whatever is accelerating the expansion of space right now. It is already a placeholder. We do not know what it is. We just know the math requires something to be there. But our measurement of its behavior is anchored to our measurement of the universe's age. Change the age, and the dark energy numbers fall apart. The expansion history falls apart. Every model we have built of how the universe will end, and we have several, and we will get to them. Those models are grounded in calculations that Gupta's fix pulls out from under them. So, fix the galaxy problem. Destroy dark energy, rewrite the constants of physics, shatter the expansion models. That is what solving it costs. The fix is not less terrifying than the problem. It is the problem with more rooms. This is the moment where you realize we are not dealing with a gap in the data. We are dealing with something that sits underneath the data, something that our models were built on top of without us ever quite checking whether it could hold the weight. And right now, with JWST looking deeper than anything that came before it, and it is not holding the weight. The anomalies are not rare. They are stacking, galaxy after galaxy appearing too early, too large, too chemically evolved. Not one antique chair in one new house, an entire street of new houses. Every single one of them full of furniture that shouldn't exist. We do not have a fix that works. Every solution proposed so far breaks something foundational. And the honest answer, the one you will find if you read what the researchers actually say in the papers and not in the press releases, is that nobody knows where to put the pressure to make this resolve cleanly. So how do we fix this broken timeline? Maybe we don't fix the timeline at all. Maybe the problem is not how long the universe has been running. Maybe the problem is that we think there was a beginning. And that single sentence is either the most liberating idea in the history of science or the most haunting. And the reason it might be true is because one of the greatest living mathematicians looked at what we know about how the universe ends and noticed something that should not be there. His name is Roger Penrose. He won the Nobel Prize in Physics, and his proposal is called Conformal Cyclic Cosmology. It does not fix the timeline. It dissolves the timeline entirely. Here is what it says. The Big Bang was not the beginning. It was a reset. Think about what happens when you finish a video game session. The screen fades to black, the console goes quiet, but the code is still sitting in memory. And when the new game loads, it does not start from nothing. It inherits leftover data, cached assets, and textures that were never fully cleared. The new level runs on the skeleton of the old one. Penrose is saying that is what the Big Bang was, not a birth, a transition. The previous universe expanded until every black hole had evaporated, every particle had decayed, every structure had dissolved into a featureless sea of radiation. Total entropy, the end of everything. But physics, at that scale, becomes conformally equivalent to a new Big Bang. The geometry of an infinitely expanded, infinitely cold, dead universe matches the geometry of a new, hot, dense beginning. The ending and the starting are the same shape. The screen faded to black, and the new level loaded, and the leftover assets came with it. That is what those galaxies are. That is what JWST-GS-Z14-0 might actually be. Not a problem with our timeline, and not a problem with star formation rates or dark matter models, or the age of the universe. Debris, inherited material from a predecessor universe. Structures that were seeded into our Big Bang from the wreckage of the one before it. We are not finding furniture that is too old for the house. We are finding furniture that belonged to whoever lived on the land before the house was ever built. We are living in a house built on a graveyard, and the ghosts left their things in the walls. We don't really know. That's the honest answer. Nobody does. And that's the part nobody wants to say on camera. Not about Penrose's model, not about Gupta's drifting constants, not about any of it. The papers are careful. The press releases are careful. But underneath the careful language is a community of researchers who are genuinely uncertain which direction the exit is. Before Penrose, there was another attempt to explain the impossible galaxies. It is called tired light. The idea is simple. Light loses energy as it travels, not because space is expanding, but because photons get tired over long distances, the same way sound fades. If that were true, the redshift we interpret as distance and age might just be exhaustion. The universe might not be expanding at all. The galaxies might not be as old as we think. Problem solved. It doesn't work. The detailed pattern of how light from distant supernovae behaves, how time dilation stretches signals from early objects, how the cosmic microwave background is structured, all of it contradicts tired light directly, as it is a clean idea that the data kills. Not a competitor to Penrose, a dead end. The universe is expanding. The redshift is real. The galaxies are genuinely that old, which means tired light leaves the impossible galaxies exactly where they were. Penrose does not leave them there. Penrose gives them an origin, and that is why his model is the most elegant answer on the table, and why it is the most unsettling thing anyone has proposed. Because if he is right, then our universe is not the first. It is an iteration, and it will not be the last. At some point, so far ahead that the number would take a lifetime to read aloud, the last black hole in our universe will finish evaporating. The last particle will decay. The last structure will dissolve, and our universe will become a featureless geometry that matches the starting conditions of a new one. The screen will fade to black. The code will stay in memory, and whatever inherits our universe will find things in their walls that they cannot explain, just as we cannot explain ours. You are inside a cycle that was running before the laws of physics as we know them existed. The stars you can see tonight are not just stars. They are running on a stage that was set by a universe that is gone, a universe whose name we will never know, whose structures we can only glimpse as ghosts inside ours. And the most unsettling part is not that this might be true. The most unsettling part is that it is the only proposal we have that makes the anomalies feel inevitable rather than catastrophic. The impossible galaxies stop being impossible, and they become expected. They become inheritance. Does that make you feel infinite? Or does it make you feel like you're walking through a haunted house where the walls are screaming? Let's leave time behind for a moment and talk about space. Because if the timeline is a loop, the space we live in is a cage. That is the thing about pivoting from time to space. You expect relief. You expect openness. Time has walls and cycles and inherited ghosts. But space should be open. Space should be the thing you can always travel further into. The thing that never closes. It doesn't. Here is what nobody tells you when they show you those images of galaxies stretching in every direction. There is a boundary. Not a wall you could ever reach. Not a line drawn in the dark, but a boundary nonetheless. And it is called the particle horizon. And it marks the edge of the universe we are physically capable of seeing. Ever. Under any circumstances. With any instrument. Not because the universe ends there, but because beyond that point, space is expanding faster than light can travel across it. The light from those regions will never reach us. It has been running toward us since the beginning of time, and it will still never arrive. You are not in an open room. You are in a bubble. And here is the thing about bubbles. They do not stay the same size. This one is growing. Technically, as light from slightly farther distances finally reaches us. But the universe beyond the bubble is stretching faster than the bubble can grow. Every second, the gap between us and the unreachable universe gets larger. Every second. The geometry locks more of reality permanently outside our window. Think of it like running on a treadmill that is speeding up. You are still running. You are still covering ground. But the treadmill is accelerating faster than you can match, and the thing you are trying to reach keeps pulling away. You will never catch it. The running just makes it feel like you should be able to. The trap isn't just biological. It's spatial, and it gets worse, because we are not just passively sealed inside this bubble. We are watching things disappear from it in real time. Galaxies at the far edge of the observable universe are already receding from us faster than light. They are not violating physics. Space itself is stretching between us and them, and that stretching accumulates faster than any signal can cross. Every second, and more galaxies cross the particle horizon. Every second that I am talking to you, a galaxy crosses that horizon and vanishes from our reality forever. Not from existence, from us. They will keep burning. They will keep forming stars. Whatever lives there will keep living. But we will never know it. We will never see it. We cannot even send a signal that would ever arrive. They become as unreachable as a universe that died before ours was born. And they cross that threshold quietly, constantly, with no announcement, at a rate that does not pause. So think about where that leaves us, sealed in a shrinking sphere of knowability, watching the exits close one by one, with no way to stop it. But the horizon is not the most unsettling part of the cage. The most unsettling part is what we found moving inside it. In the early 2000s, astronomers started noticing something wrong with galaxy clusters. Hundreds of them, spread across enormous distances, were moving. Not just moving the way everything moves in an expanding universe, drifting apart from one another, moving together, hundreds of clusters, all flowing in the same direction, toward the same specific patch of sky, at roughly 2 million miles per hour. That is called dark flow. And the reason it is disturbing is not the speed, it is the consistency. One cluster moving in a strange direction is noise. 10 clusters is a statistical quirk. Hundreds of clusters, all pointed the same way, at the same speed, across a region of space so large it strains comprehension. That is not noise. That is a signal. Something is pulling them. Something we cannot see. Imagine you are in a windowless room. No windows, no doors visible, just walls. And then all the steel furniture starts sliding toward the north wall, slowly at first, then consistently. You cannot see what is on the other side of that wall, but the furniture does not care. It is going there regardless. That is dark flow. The clusters are the furniture, and we are in the room, watching it happen, with no way to see what is on the other side of the wall. Here is what makes this genuinely hard to explain away. The particle horizon is supposed to be our edge, yet whatever is causing this pull should not be able to reach across that boundary and tug at things inside our observable universe. The math of a standard expanding cosmos does not easily produce a force coherent enough and vast enough to drag hundreds of clusters in one direction at this scale, which means whatever is generating it is either extraordinarily massive and hiding somewhere inside the bubble, or it is outside the bubble entirely. We do not know which. Nobody knows which. The honest answer is that dark flow remains one of the most contested and unexplained large-scale observations in cosmology. Some researchers dispute the measurements. Others accept the signal and cannot account for the source. But the clusters are moving. The direction is consistent. And the scale of the required source is, by any measure we have, larger than anything we have catalogued inside the observable universe. Something is pulling at the cage from outside, or something enormous is hiding just inside the edge, invisible, waiting for us to figure out what it is. The fact that we are trapped in this violent flow changed the way we think about our neighbors. Because if something is pulling the clusters and something is pushing us, then the picture of the universe we were taught, orderly, expanding, neutral, is not just incomplete, it is almost comically wrong. The universe is not a peaceful room, it is a wind tunnel, and we are debris. Start with the neighbors themselves. Look south, deep south, in the direction of the constellation Eridanus. There is a patch of sky that should not exist, a region of space roughly 1 billion light-years across, where the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the early universe, is measurably colder than everything around it. Not slightly colder, anomalously colder, 1 billion light-years wide and wrong. That is called the cold spot. The standard explanations do not cover it. A void could produce a cold patch, but not one this large. A statistical fluctuation is possible, but brutally unlikely. The shape, the size, the temperature, all of it sits outside what the models predict. And for years, cosmologists shrugged and filed it under unexplained. Then, Laura Mersini Houghton proposed something that changed the texture of the question. She is a theoretical physicist, and her argument is this: we did not form in isolation. If ours is one universe among many, a multiverse of bubble universes separated by quantum boundaries, then early in our history, when those boundaries were close, two of those bubbles may have touched. Think about two soap bubbles floating in a sink. When they drift together and make contact, they do not pass through each other. They flatten against each other. The surface deforms at the point of impact, pressed thin where they meet. If that happened to us, if our universe and a neighboring one collided in infancy, the impact would leave a scar on the sky, a region of suppressed temperature spread across an enormous arc of the southern sky, 1 billion light-years wide, anomalously cold. The cold spot might be that scar. We do not know. Nobody knows. Mersini Houghton's theory is contested, and the measurements are still being refined. But sit with what she is proposing for a moment, because if she is right, we have already been hit, once, by something we will never see, in a universe whose laws we do not know, across a boundary we cannot cross. And if it happened once, the question of whether it can happen again is not hysterical. It is logical. The cage has walls, and the walls have dents, but the cold spot is the distant threat. The immediate one is underfoot. We are moving, right now, not in the slow drift of galactic expansion, not in the quiet revolution around the Milky Way's center. Moving. The entire local group, our galaxy, Andromeda, everything gravitationally bound to us, is hurtling through space at 630 kilometers per second. And that is over 1.4 million miles per hour, every hour, constantly. You cannot feel it. Your body gives you no signal that this is happening, but the measurement is unambiguous. And here is where it gets structural. That velocity has two causes, pulling in opposite directions. In front of us, buried in the direction of the Centaurus constellation, there is the Great Attractor, an enormous concentration of mass, hundreds of millions of light-years away, whose gravity is drawing us and thousands of other galaxies toward it. We mapped its general location before we could even see it. The pull is that strong. But behind us, discovered in 2017, is something stranger, a structure called the Dipole Repeller, a massive void. Not mass, but the absence of mass, enormous in scale. And because there is so little matter there to generate gravity in that direction, it functions like negative gravity. The surrounding universe pulls us away from the void. It pushes. We are caught between the pull of the Great Attractor ahead and the push of the Dipole Repeller behind, and the result is a velocity of 1.4 million miles per hour with nowhere to stop. You are not standing in the universe. You are being fired through it. The map we thought we understood. Galaxies drifting gently apart. Expansion proceeding in every direction equally. Space as neutral territory. That map is a lie. What the actual measurements show is a cosmos structured by violence. Vast attractors pulling walls of galaxies into sheets and filaments. Enormous voids pushing everything away from their edges. Galaxy clusters flowing in a direction we cannot explain at 2 million miles per hour. Our own local group moving at 1.4 million miles per hour in response to forces so large they warp the geometry of the neighborhood. Every direction is dominated by something we can barely see and do not fully understand. We are debris in a gravitational wind tunnel, accelerating through a battle between a void and a superstructure, orbiting a galaxy that sits in a bubble of possible bruised spacetime, inside an observable universe that is actively shrinking around us, while something invisible hauls at it from the edge. That is the map. So the question that follows is the one that nobody wants to ask too loudly. If this is the map, violent, structured, full of invisible forces and ancient collisions and impossible flows, are we alone on it? Are we alone on it? That question used to be about radio signals, about whether some distant civilization was broadcasting into the dark, and whether we had ears sensitive enough to catch the whisper. That framing, the listening, the waiting, the giant dish pointed at the sky, that framing is over. James Webb did not come to listen. It came to hunt. Here is how it hunts. When a planet passes in front of its star, a tiny fraction of that starlight doesn't get blocked. It passes through the planet's atmosphere on its way to us, and the gases in that atmosphere are not neutral. They are picky. Each gas absorbs specific wavelengths of light. Oxygen steals certain colors, methane takes others, carbon dioxide takes its own slice, and what arrives at the telescope is starlight with pieces missing. A barcode, a chemical fingerprint pressed into the light by whatever is floating in that planet's sky. The setup for this technique is a shadow puppet show with colored water held up to a lamp. The shadow tells you the shape, but the color that bleeds through tells you the chemistry. That is transit spectroscopy, and James Webb is doing it right now, in real time, on every planet it can find within 40 light-years of Earth, not guessing, not theorizing, reading the actual chemical inventory of other worlds. And it is sensitive enough to detect chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, the industrial byproduct of refrigerants and manufacturing processes that no geological or biological mechanism produces naturally. If a planet's atmosphere contains CFCs, something built a factory. That is not a biosignature. That is a technosignature. That is proof of technology. The tool is not blunt. The tool is surgical. If there is life nearby, any life complex enough to leave a chemical trace, James Webb has the capability to find it. So think about where that leaves us. The scanner works. The range is 40 light-years in every direction. And what is it finding? Equilibrium. Every atmosphere James Webb has read comes back balanced. Carbon dioxide and nitrogen in proportions that make chemical sense. Stable. Ordered. the kind of atmosphere a dead world produces when physics and geology run their course without any interference. But look at the air you are breathing right now. Actually sit with that for a second. And the air in your lungs is approximately 21% oxygen, and it also contains methane. Those two gases should not be able to coexist. Oxygen destroys methane. If you leave them together long enough, the oxygen wins and the methane is gone. The fact that Earth's atmosphere contains both simultaneously in stable proportions means something is constantly replenishing the methane fast enough to keep up with the oxygen consuming it. That something is life. Billions of organisms exhaling, decaying, digesting, fermenting, pumping methane back into the air faster than chemistry can erase it. The disequilibrium is the signature. The chemical chaos is the proof. Life does not produce order. Life produces a specific, relentless, detectable kind of disorder. A tug of war between what the chemistry wants to do and what the biology keeps forcing it not to do. Dead planets are calm. They reach equilibrium and they stay there. The chemistry settles, the reactions complete, the atmosphere arrives at its final resting state and holds. Everywhere James Webb looks, the atmospheres are resting. We are looking for a pulse, but we are finding flat lines everywhere we look. Flat lines. Not silence. Silence would be easier. These are readings. Clear, clean, interpretable readings from real atmospheres around real worlds. The instrument is working. The data is coming in. And the data keeps saying the same thing. Stable. Balanced. At rest. Every barcode it reads is the barcode of a world where nothing is fighting the chemistry. Nothing is replenishing what should run out. And nothing is holding two incompatible gases in tension because 1 trillion organisms need them both. 40 light-years is not a small sample. It contains dozens of candidate systems, planets in habitable zones, rocky worlds with detectable atmospheres, and across all of them, the same result. The universe, at least in this neighborhood, has reached its chemical conclusions without any interference from anything alive. That silence is not a gap in the data. The data is the silence. And it forces the question outward, harder than any radio telescope ever could. Because at least with radio, we could say the equipment wasn't good enough. We cannot say that anymore. The equipment is extraordinary. The 40 light-year radius it covers contains worlds that could host life. And they are not hosting it. Yes, or which means either life is so rare that we are the only accident within 40 light-years of our own star, or something about the conditions that create life are so specific, so demanding, so improbable, that what happened here was not a natural consequence of chemistry being given enough time. What happened here might have been a miracle, and the flat lines suggest it has not happened again. Not nearby, not within the range of the most powerful chemical scanner our species has ever built. So what does it actually take? What combination of conditions? What chain of events? What series of accidents inside accidents has to occur before chemistry stops being dead and starts being alive? Start with the molecule, not the planet, not the star, the molecule. Before anything can live, yes, before any organism can build a cell wall or replicate or consume energy, it needs two things. It needs DNA, the instruction code that tells a cell how to build every protein it will ever need. And it needs ATP, the energy currency that powers every single chemical reaction inside a living cell. ATP is the fuel. DNA is the blueprint. You need one to make the other. Here is the trap. You need ATP to build DNA. But you need DNA to build the machinery that produces ATP. Do you see the trap? It is a closed loop, not a chicken and egg problem. That at least implies a sequence. This is both things requiring each other to exist before either of them does. The molecule that stores life's instructions requires the molecule that powers life's chemistry, and the molecule that powers life's chemistry requires the instructions to know how to build itself. Neither one can come first. Both have to arrive simultaneously, functional, compatible, and in the same place. Take a box. Fill it with every component of a working watch. The springs, the gears, the hands, the casing. Seal it. Shake it for 1 trillion years. The watch does not assemble itself. The parts do not snap together. Complexity does not emerge from collision. And a watch is 1,000 times simpler than the simplest self-replicating molecule we have ever found. Life did not just need the parts. Life needed the instructions to arrange the parts already written into the parts themselves before the parts existed. That is not a long shot. That is a near impossibility. And yet, here we are. Yea, but here is what that means for every world James Webb is watching. The odds that this specific closed loop resolved itself once, here, in this ocean, on this rock, are already so small that most biologists refuse to assign a number to it. The odds it happened twice, independently, in the same galactic neighborhood, are smaller still, and most star systems are not even offering the conditions to get started. 75% of all stars in the galaxy are red dwarfs, not yellow suns like ours. Dim, violent, magnetically unstable things that periodically erupt with plasma bursts intense enough to strip the atmosphere off any planet unfortunate enough to orbit close enough to receive any heat. And red dwarfs are faint, which means the habitable zone is close, which means the planets are close, which means they get stripped. A bare rock, no buffer, no chemistry running long enough to get complicated. Less than 8% of stars are the right size, the right temperature, the right age, the right stability to let a planet hold liquid water long enough for chemistry to get interesting. 8%. And even inside that 8%, you need the orbit to be nearly circular. Elliptical orbits swing planets from frozen to baked and back again. You need a large outer planet, something the size of Jupiter, sitting further out, acting as a gravitational catcher, pulling in the asteroids and comets that would otherwise bombard the inner rocky worlds every few 100,000 years. You need a large moon, close enough to stabilize the axial tilt, to keep the planet from wobbling chaotically between ice ages and greenhouse events. Yet you need plate tectonics to recycle carbon. You need a magnetic field to deflect the stellar wind. Every single one of those conditions has to be met at the same time. Remove any one of them and the chemistry stops. The clock never starts. We exist as a species for 200,000 years, which sounds like a long time until you notice that the universe has been running for over 13 billion years. We are a breath inside a breath, and in the last 80 years, 80 out of 200,000, we went from harmless to capable of ending ourselves, from animals to architects of our own extinction, in a sliver so thin it barely registers. If that ratio holds for other civilizations, if the gap between becoming complex enough to matter and becoming dangerous enough to die is always this narrow, and then the window during which any civilization is both alive and reachable is extraordinarily small. So where is everyone? That is the weight of the flat lines. Not just that nearby planets are dead, but that in a galaxy with hundreds of billions of stars, many of them old enough to have had a billion-year head start on us, the silence is total. If life is rare, that explains the silence. We are alone. And if we are the only thing in this galaxy that has ever looked up and asked the question, then our extinction is not just our tragedy. It is the universe going permanently blind. Not metaphorically, literally. A cosmos of 100 billion galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars, and the only arrangement of matter that has ever achieved the capacity to observe and comprehend any of it, gone. Yet the universe does not mourn. It does not notice. It simply continues expanding, cooling, and darkening, with no one left to describe it. But if life is not rare, if the conditions are brutal but not impossible, and the galaxy is populated with minds that survived longer than we have, then the silence means something different, something worse. Because a galaxy full of civilizations should be loud. It should be overflowing with signals, structures, evidence. We should not be able to point a telescope anywhere and find nothing artificial. But we do. Everywhere. Every direction. Nothing. The room is not empty. The room might be crowded. And everyone in it has gone very, very quiet. That is not peace. That is what you hear when something in the dark has already made everyone else stop talking. As something is taking civilizations out of the game before they can reach us, before we can reach them, before they can leave any trace loud enough to survive the distance. Something is filtering them out. The question is not whether the filter exists. The silence proves it does. The question is where it sits in the sequence. Behind us or ahead? Behind us or ahead? That is the only question that matters now. And the honest answer is we do not know. But we can do the math. Think about the ratio. 200,000 years of human existence. 80 years with the ability to end ourselves. That is not a civilization lifespan. That is a fuse. And if intelligence across the universe follows any version of the same trajectory, if becoming smart and becoming dangerous are always separated by roughly the same gap, then the letter L in the Drake equation, the one that stands for how long a civilization remains alive and broadcasting, might not be thousands of years. It might be 300, because you only have to miscalculate once. One bad actor, one system failure, one leader on the wrong day with access to the right button. The window slams shut. 300 years of signals and then silence. Multiply that across a galaxy of ancient stars, most of them billions of years older than our sun, and you get a galaxy full of graves, not a galaxy full of neighbors. That is the first part of the answer. Intelligence itself might be the filter, not an asteroid, not a dying sun, not a pathogen. Us. The thing that makes us special is the same thing that makes us fragile. The brain that can describe a galaxy is the same brain that learned to split an atom in a century. We are ants that figured out how to build a nuclear bomb. And once an ant colony crosses that threshold, it does not matter how many workers it has. It matters whether any of them are patient enough, cooperative enough, lucky enough to survive the crossing. Most of them probably are not. But here is where it gets worse, because the filter might not just be self-destruction. Imagine you are walking through a dark forest at night, unarmed. You cannot see more than a few feet in any direction, and you hear a twig snap. Yet you do not know what made that sound. It might be nothing. It might be a deer. It might be something that wants to kill you. What do? You go quiet. You move carefully. You do not light a fire and announce your position. You do not call out and wait to see if whatever is out there calls back. Because the cost of being wrong is not a conversation. It is the end of the walk. That is the logic every advanced civilization faces. Game theory calls it the chain of suspicion. You cannot verify the intentions of another civilization. You cannot know whether they are peaceful. You cannot know whether they will remain peaceful after contact. You cannot even know whether they are capable of understanding a peace signal. So the rational move, the coldly logical move, is to stay hidden. And if you detect another civilization before it detects you, the rational move gets darker still. Because a civilization that knows you exist and has a head start on you is a civilization that can decide what to do about you before you have any say in the matter. In the trench, you do not announce yourself. You stay below the rim, because somewhere out there is a soldier you cannot see, and he has a gun, and he has been in that trench a lot longer than you have. Every civilization that survives long enough to do the math eventually reaches this conclusion. You hide. You go dark. You do not broadcast. You listen, but you do not speak. And then there is us. We have been broadcasting for 100 years. 100 years of radio signals, expanding outward at the speed of light in every direction, and a growing sphere of noise announcing not just our existence, but our location, our biology, our technology, our stage of development. Signals from the 1950s are already washing over thousands of star systems. I Love Lucy, the World Series, presidential addresses, war dispatches. Every signal we have ever sent has left and is never coming back. We sent the Arecibo message, a direct, intentional broadcast aimed at a star cluster, encoding our body plan, our DNA structure, the size of our population, a map to find us. We put a physical record on Voyager, with a literal diagram showing where Earth sits relative to known pulsars. A map home, attached to an object we deliberately threw out of the solar system. This is the part that keeps me up, not the aliens. The fact that we can't take the signal back. Every one of those transmissions is already gone. They are out there, right now, moving at the speed of light through systems we have never seen, past planets we have never catalogued, towards civilizations, if any exist, that have had no say in receiving them. We did not hide. We screamed. Into a forest we do not understand, using a voice we cannot silence because we sent it before we knew enough to be afraid. The baby crying in a forest full of wolves does not know what a wolf is. That is not comfort. That is the definition of the problem. And here is the physics of what an answer might look like. You do not need a warship. You do not need soldiers or logistics or a declaration of intent. You take a rock, a school bus, roughly speaking, nothing exotic, and you accelerate it to 90% of the speed of light. That is it. The kinetic energy in that single object equals our entire nuclear arsenal. No warhead, no engineering, just mass and velocity, arriving with no warning because it is traveling just behind the light that announces it. By the time you see it coming, the conversation is already over. The trap is this: we cannot hide, we cannot run. The signal is already out there, and we cannot know if what receives it will treat us the way you treat an anthill. You didn't notice before you stepped on it, not with malice, just with indifference, or whether it will treat us the way you treat something that just announced itself as a future problem. We exist on one planet. We broadcast for 100 years before we understood what broadcasting meant. We are, by every measure, the loudest thing in our neighborhood. And our neighborhood, as James Webb keeps reminding us, is stranger and older and more structured by violence than we have ever been comfortable admitting. So think about where that leaves us: exposed, unable to retract, in a universe where the silence of every other civilization might be the most important survival instruction ever written, and we did not read it in time. Let's leave the biological threats for a moment and look at the stage itself. Because even if we hide from the aliens, and even if we survive our own weapons, we still have to live in this universe. And the universe, it turns out, has its own opinions about how long anything gets to exist. The stage has its own rules, and we assumed those rules were stable. Here is what we were holding on to, even after everything, even after the broken timelines and the galaxies that should not exist, and the signals already screaming through the dark. We had the laws. We had the constants. We had the mathematics underneath reality that does not change, does not bend, does not wake up one morning and decide to be different. Whatever else was wrong, the physics was solid ground. You could build on it. You could trust it. But there is a number, one number, the rate at which the universe is expanding, how fast space itself is stretching. Right now, in every direction, between every galaxy, including the space between you and the wall you are sitting nearest to. It is a single value, and we have measured it twice. The two measurements do not agree. The first team looks at the oldest light in existence, the afterglow of the Big Bang itself, at the cosmic microwave background, the earliest snapshot of what the universe looked like before anything existed. They run the physics forward from that moment. They calculate what the expansion rate must be today, and they get 67 kilometers per second per megaparsec. 67. Written into the early universe like a birthmark. The second team does not use the ancient light. They use Cepheid variable stars. Stars that pulse, physically brighten and dim on a clockwork schedule. And because that schedule tells you how bright the star truly is, you can calculate exactly how far away it sits. They use these stars as measuring posts, laid out across the local universe like mile markers on a highway, and they measure the expansion directly. What do they get? 73, not 67, 73, and 9% apart. The gap between those two numbers is not a rounding error. It is not a calibration issue that a better instrument will smooth over. Both teams have spent years checking their work. Both teams know what the other team found. Neither number has moved. Here is the only way to understand what that gap means. You measure your height today with a tape measure, 5'11". Then you go back to your childhood medical records, find every recorded measurement, every growth chart, every pediatrician's note, and you calculate forward using known growth rates, what your height must be right now, and you get 5'6", 5 inches of person that either exist or do not, depending entirely on which method you trust. Either the tape measure is broken, or the growth chart is wrong, or something happened to your body that no doctor recorded and no biology anticipated. There is no fourth option. Something is wrong. You just cannot yet tell which thing. That is the Hubble tension. And it is not theoretical. It is a measurement. 2 measurements, and they contradict each other. The best model we have, lambda CDM, the framework that explains dark matter and dark energy and the large-scale structure of the universe and the distribution of galaxies across billions of light years, cannot account for the gap. It does not resolve to a single answer. You plug in the early universe numbers and you get 67. You plug in the local universe numbers and you get 73. Lambda CDM cannot tell you which one is real because Lambda CDM was built on the assumption that they would be the same number. They are not. So physicists proposed a patch, early dark energy, the idea that in the first moments of the universe, before the light we use for the CMB calculation even had time to settle, there was an additional energy component that briefly sped up expansion and then faded. A hidden acceleration in the opening seconds that would make the early universe slightly smaller, slightly hotter, slightly faster, and would push the CMB prediction closer to 73. It does not work cleanly. Introduce early dark energy and it fixes the Hubble tension on one axis while breaking other predictions elsewhere. The model strains. Other measurements that were settled start to wobble. You patch one crack and 2 new ones appear in the ceiling. The clock is broken. And this is what that means at a scale you can feel. Every number we use to date the universe, the age, the timeline, how long things had to form, how long we have existed inside this particular configuration of physics. Every one of those numbers flows downstream from the expansion rate. The expansion rate is the ruler, and the clock rolled into one. We have been using it as bedrock, and it is giving us 2 different answers depending on where we stand when we measure it. Either the early universe or the local universe is lying to us, and we cannot tell which. Sit with that for a moment. Not the abstract version, the personal version. Right now, the most fundamental description of the thing you live inside, not the street, not the country, not the planet, the universe, is internally inconsistent. The best minds alive have not resolved it. The best model alive cannot contain it. And if the expansion rate is genuinely faster than the ancient light suggests, if the local measurement is the true one, then the universe is not just expanding, it is accelerating. And it may be accelerating faster than we built our models to survive. What happens when it accelerates further? The balloon stretches. Everything on its surface gets pulled apart, not by force, not by impact, but by the space between things growing faster than the things themselves can compensate. Painting on a rubber balloon inflated too fast. The brushstrokes don't tear, they just separate. First by a little, then by more, then by enough that nothing holding them together can reach across the gap. That is the Big Rip. Actually, that's not quite right. The Big Rip doesn't destroy things, it unmakes them. There's a difference. A destruction implies something acts on you, a force, an explosion, a collision. Unmaking means the relationships between your parts stop being relevant. The atoms in your hand are not bonded by touching each other. They are bonded by fields that operate across tiny distances. Expand space fast enough, and those distances grow past the threshold where the fields function. The bond doesn't break. It just ceases to apply. First, the galaxies separate beyond gravitational reach, then the solar systems, then the planets, then the molecules, then the atoms themselves. Not in a bang, in a quiet, escalating unraveling, as the space between every paired thing quietly exceeds the range of every force that made them a pair. The trap has layers. We talked about the trap of biology, the trap of light speed, the trap of silence and distance. But the physics itself is a trap, and the physics can change. Here is what makes the Big Rip a question rather than a certainty. We do not know if dark energy is constant. The expansion may stay at its current rate. It may plateau. It may accelerate beyond anything our models predict. The honest answer is we do not know. The Hubble tension means the rate is already behaving in ways our best framework cannot explain. An acceleration we cannot account for is already in the data. What it does next is genuinely unknown. But even that is not the worst version of what the stage can do. Imagine you are hiking on a mountain. You have set up camp on what seems like solid ground. A wide ledge, flat enough, stable enough. Fog rolls in. You can't see past the edge, but you feel safe. You sleep. In the morning, the fog clears, and you are sitting 3 feet from a drop of another 1,000 feet that you had no idea was there. You were never on a plateau. You were on a narrow ledge on the face of something much taller. That is the Higgs field. Your body is held together by the current value of the Higgs field. Every particle that has that mass because of where the Higgs field currently sits. We believe it is stable. The physics we have built operates on that assumption. But the calculations, specifically the mass of the top quark, the heaviest known fundamental particle, put us extraordinarily close to the edge between a stable field and a metastable one. Metastable means stable enough, for now. It means the field is sitting in a valley, but that valley may not be the lowest valley. There may be a deeper one, a true ground state, and if the field ever slips from where it sits now into where it actually wants to be, the transition spreads outward as a bubble of true vacuum, expanding in every direction at the speed of light. Sit with that for a moment, not the abstract version. One moment, you are sitting there alive, holding your phone. The wall of the bubble hits you. You wouldn't feel it. You wouldn't hear it. The bubble moves at the speed of light, which means the information that it is coming cannot travel faster than its arrival. Your neurons cannot fire a warning. Your body cannot register a threat. The physics you are built from simply becomes the wrong physics. The constants that govern how your atoms bond, how energy moves, how matter coheres, they change. Instantaneously, not destroyed, unmade. The laws you run on stop applying, and for all we know, a bubble was triggered 2 million years ago. 2 million years is the distance to the Andromeda galaxy. A bubble initiated there, at that moment, traveling at the speed of light, would be arriving right now. We would have no way of detecting it in advance. No telescope sees faster than the thing it's looking for. No warning can precede its own cause. There is no signal that could beat it here. We would simply stop. The trap has layers: biological, spatial, and now physical. The laws themselves are not bedrock. They are a ledge in the fog, and we have no way of seeing how far down it goes. You feel solid right now. You feel like the floor is under you and the rules are stable. But the floor is a field, and the field may be resting in the wrong valley. And the measurement that tells us how fast the universe is expanding is already giving 2 different answers. The stage is not just rotting. It could vanish. Not collapse, not decay, not fade. Just switch off. One configuration of reality replaced by another, washing through everything that exists at the fastest speed anything can move, leaving nothing behind that resembles what was here. And that question, what is here, What is the stage actually made of? That is where this goes. Next, if the vacuum is unstable and the stage is rotting, we have to ask what the stage is actually made of. And that question, what the stage is actually made of, has an answer that is worse than rotting, worse than vanishing, because it turns out the stage was never quite real in the way you thought it was. Take any photograph shot in the highest resolution you can find, zoom in close enough, and the image dissolves into squares, individual pixels. The picture was always made of them. You just could not see the grain from far away. Reality works the same way. There is a length called the Planck length, below which space itself becomes meaningless. Not hard to measure, not just practically impossible, meaningless. A distance so small that the concepts of distance and location and position no longer apply. You cannot go smaller because smaller stops being a thing. The resolution limit is built into the fabric of existence. Reality has pixels. And if reality has pixels, it is not a continuous substance. It is a rendering, a grid with a resolution cap, below which the rules of geometry simply refuse to run. But here is where it stops being a technical problem and becomes something else entirely. In the 1970s, Stephen Hawking and Jacob Bekenstein were working on what happens to information when it falls into a black hole. A black hole is the densest object the universe produces, pure compressed volume. If information is stored in volume, a black hole should be the most information-dense thing possible. But what they found is that the amount of information a black hole can contain is not proportional to its volume. It is proportional to its surface area. Not how much space is inside, how much skin is on the outside. Imagine throwing an entire library into a black hole. Not just some books, the entire library, every word, every page, every binding, every piece of information that those books contain. Hawking and Bekenstein found that the information is not stored inside. It is plastered across the surface like stickers on a suitcase. The depth is gone. The volume is irrelevant. Everything that fell in exists as a two-dimensional imprint on the outer edge. That should stop you, because a black hole is not a special case they invented to make the math work. Black holes are what happens to ordinary matter under ordinary physical laws pushed to their limit. What those laws revealed, at the limit, is that depth is redundant, that a three-dimensional object's information can be fully encoded on a two-dimensional surface without losing anything. That is not a quirk of black holes. That is a property of the physics. And physicists followed that thread to its conclusion. And the conclusion has a name, the holographic principle. The holographic principle says that everything happening inside a volume of space can be completely described by information encoded on the boundary of that volume. Not approximately, not with some loss. Completely. Every particle, every interaction, every event that has ever happened inside a region of space exists, in its entirety, as a pattern on the surface surrounding it. You have held a credit card. On the surface of that card, there is a hologram, a flat piece of foil that contains the image of a bird, or a globe, or some other small figure that appears three-dimensional when light hits it from the right angle. That depth is not real. There is no physical depth in the foil. The third dimension is produced by the pattern on the surface. It is a projection. You are the bird on the credit card. Every dimension you move through, every direction you reach out and touch, every distance you have ever crossed. It may be the projection of a pattern on a surface you cannot see and cannot reach. Flat data, hallucinating depth, and the depth feels real. Of course it does. The bird on the credit card has no way to check. Its entire existence unfolds within the projection. So think about where that leaves us. The resolution limit says reality has a grid. The surface area of a black hole says depth is redundant. The holographic principle says the third dimension may be a derived quantity, a result, not a foundation. And when you line those three things up next to each other, the universe starts to look less like a physical place and more like a process. A computation, something running on rules, constrained by resolution, where information is the fundamental thing and space is what the information produces, which is when the speed of light starts looking different, not a property of the universe. A refresh rate, the maximum speed at which information can update from one location to the next. And gravity starts looking different too, not a curvature in space-time, a collision detection engine, and the part of the system that prevents objects from occupying the same position in the grid. These are not metaphors designed to comfort you. These are literal reframings that serious physicists have published and argued over. We do not know if they are correct. The honest answer is nobody knows. But the math does not forbid it, and the math is the only language reality has consistently agreed to speak in. Code can be rewritten, code can be paused, and code can be deleted. Not metaphorically. If reality is a computation, if the laws, the resolution limit, the surface area storage of information are all consistent with a system that processes rather than simply exists, then what you are is not matter. You are information, a specific, temporary, enormously complex configuration of data, a running on rules that could, in principle, be altered, suspended, or simply stopped. And that raises something worse than a vacuum bubble, worse than a phase transition washing through space at the speed of light. Because at least those threats are physical. At least those are things happening to matter. If you are information, the question becomes, what happens to information over time? And that is the question that changes everything. Because if you are information, then the anomalies James Webb found stop looking like physics problems. They start looking like something else entirely. Think about how a video game generates its world. Modern open-world games use procedural generation, algorithms that build terrain, populate environments, assign enemies their difficulty ratings based on where you are in the story. Yet you start in the easy zone. The system knows you are new. It places beginner-level creatures near the starting area because that is what the logic demands. But sometimes the procedural generation glitches. Sometimes a high-level boss, something that should only appear after 40 hours of play, something armored and enormous and built to destroy experienced players, spawns in the starting area, right next to the village where you begin. And the game doesn't crash. It just runs it. The creature stands there, impossible by the rules of the system, because the system made an error. JWST-GS-Z 14-0 is a high-level boss in the starting area. A galaxy with hundreds of millions of solar masses of stars, forged carbon and oxygen already distributed through its structure, existing 290 million years after the Big Bang. That is not supposed to be there. The early universe was supposed to be the tutorial zone, hydrogen and helium, darkness, simple rules. And then James Webb looked, and there it was, armored, massive, already ancient, already wrong. We called it an anomaly. We called it a challenge to our models. But if reality is a computation, if the holographic principle and the resolution limit and the surface area storage of information are all pointing at a system that processes rather than simply exists, then there is another word for what James Webb might be finding. Rendering errors, compression artifacts, the universe running out of RAM. At the dark flow, hundreds of galaxy clusters accelerating towards something outside the observable boundary at nearly 2 million miles per hour might not be a gravitational source we cannot see. It might be a memory leak, the system pulling resources in a direction the simulation never adequately masked. The cold spot in Eridanus, 1 billion light-years of emptiness that should not statistically exist, might not be a scar from a collision with a neighboring bubble universe. It might be a dropped texture, an unloaded sector, a region where the rendering simply did not complete. We do not know. Nobody knows. The honest answer is we cannot distinguish between a genuine physics anomaly and a glitch in a system we are running inside of. Because the bird on the credit card has no way to check. You are the bird on the credit card, are dreaming that you are solid, And that is the trap. Not the trap of biology, not the trap of light speed, the trap of identity itself. You experience continuity. You experience depth. You experience the sensation of being a persistent, stable thing moving through time. But if information is what you are, then every single one of those experiences is just pattern maintenance, the system updating its record of you. And the trap of consciousness is that it feels like more than that. It feels like substance. It feels like ground. It is neither. This brings us to the ultimate consequence of being information, entropy. And in the language of information theory, entropy isn't just disorder. It is deletion. Whether this is a hologram or a simulation or what we still insist on calling physical reality, information degrades. And that is not a theory. That is one of the hardest walls in all of science. The second law of thermodynamics does not negotiate. It does not make exceptions. And for information, what that law says is simple and merciless. Complex patterns become simpler over time. Structure dissolves. Signal becomes noise. You feel this. Right now, in your body, you feel this happening, and you call it something gentler than what it is. Every time you try to recall a memory, the act of recalling it slightly rewrites it. The retrieval is not clean. The file is not read-only. You access it, and in accessing it, you alter it. Noise introduced at the moment of reading. Every time a cell in your body divides, the copy is not perfect. Errors accumulate in the sequence. Small corruptions that compound across decades. We call this aging. But it is data rot, and it is the same process that degrades a hard drive, that turns a photograph kept too long in sunlight into a pale ghost of what it recorded. The mechanism is identical, only the substrate differs, and death is not a threshold you cross. It is not an event. Death is the formatting of the hard drive, the complete dissolution of a specific, enormously complex, improbable configuration of information that took the universe billions of years to assemble. Your particular arrangement of memory, reflex, fear, recognition, the exact weight of what you love, gone. Not moved, not transformed into something equivalent. Formatted, overwritten by entropy until the pattern is unrecoverable. And there is no backup. There is no second drive. There is no cloud storage waiting to restore the file. Code can be rewritten, code can be paused, and code can be deleted. The first time you heard that, it was a philosophical possibility, a framework, a thought experiment about the nature of reality. But now it has a body. It has your body. Because the code that is being deleted, slowly and continuously and without any possibility of appeal, is you. The entropy is not happening to something else. It is happening to the only configuration that has ever experienced being you in a universe that does not record what it erases. So you are sitting inside a trap that has no exit on the biological level, no exit on the spatial level, and now no exit on the informational level either. Sealed by physics, degrading by law, formatted by time. But there is something that keeps pulling at the edge of this logic. Something that refuses to sit still inside the argument. Because if information can never truly be created or destroyed, if Hawking and Bekenstein were right that the universe preserves the ledger even when it swallows a star, then what does formatting actually mean? Is there a loophole in deletion? So here is what the loophole actually says. If information is conserved, if the universe truly keeps the ledger, then the ledger is finite. The number of atoms that exist is enormous beyond any intuitive grasp, but it is not infinite. It is a number. And time, by contrast, might be. If you run a finite system through infinite time, something eventually has to happen. The same configurations will recur, not just similar ones, the same. Atom for atom, arrangement for arrangement, the same. This is the Poincaré recurrence theorem. And the first time you hear it, it sounds like rescue. And there are only 52 cards in a deck. Shuffle them forever, and eventually you must deal the same hand. Not a hand that looks similar, The exact same sequence, in the exact same order. The math is merciless about this. Given enough time, and we are talking about timescales that make the current age of the universe look like the first half-second of a sentence, every arrangement of matter that has ever existed will exist again, including yours, including the exact configuration of neurons and memories and fears that constitutes you, sitting there right now, hearing this. You will be reassembled, and for a moment, one brief, impossible moment that sounds like it means something, that the formatting is not permanent, that the hard drive is rewritten by entropy only to be reconstructed by time, that you come back. But then you follow the logic one step further. You come back with no memory of this life, with no knowledge that you have lived before, with no warning about what is coming. Every mistake you have ever made, you will make again. Every loss you have ever carried, you will carry again, and you will not remember having survived it the first time. Every moment of pain will arrive at you fresh, uninsulated by the knowledge that you once already made it through. You are trapped in a loop of existence that repeats every single mistake, every single pain, and every single joy forever. And the you that recurs will not know they are recurring. They will believe, exactly as you believe right now, that this is the first time, that this life is singular, that it is theirs. Nietzsche saw this, and he described a demon that creeps into your bedroom and whispers, "This life, exactly as you have lived it, you will have to live innumerable times more. Not a different life, this one. Every tedium, every humiliation, every afternoon you wished away, every grief that hollowed you out, again, and again, and again, without end. The escape from deletion is not an escape. It is the same sentence written infinite times. I don't know how to make that feel okay. I'm not sure it's supposed to feel okay. And if the eternal return is not enough to close the trap completely, the second problem finishes the job, because we have been assuming, this entire time, that you are real. Here is the question nobody wants to sit with. Is it more likely that the entire history of a universe, 14 billion years of expansion, and the formation of galaxies and stars and planets and oceans and evolution and brains, produced a conscious observer? Or is it more likely that a single, lone brain simply fluctuated into existence from quantum noise for 1 second, containing the false impression of a lifetime of memories? Statistically, the second one wins. This is the Boltzmann brain paradox. In a universe old enough and large enough, random thermal fluctuations will occasionally, against all probability, but given enough time, inevitably, assemble a functioning brain, a brain complete with memories, with the sensation of a body, with the feeling of sitting in a specific room, holding a specific phone, hearing a specific voice. And that brain would have no way to distinguish its hallucinated existence from a real one, because the hallucination is perfect. And for every one real person living in a real timeline with a genuine continuous history, there should be trillions of fluctuation brains that pop into existence for a second, experience exactly what you are experiencing right now, and dissolve back into noise, trillions to one, which means the prior probability before you examine a single piece of evidence, before you reach for anything reassuring. The prior probability is that you are one of the trillions, not one of the real ones. A fluctuation, a momentary coherence of matter that will vanish in the next second, back into the thermal static of an indifferent cosmos. The chair you are sitting in might not be real. The room around you might not be real. Your memories of waking up this morning, of the weeks and months and years that led you here. Statistically, and those are more likely to be a hallucinated history than an actual one. And here is what makes the teleporter paradox so sharp against all of this. If you rebuilt a person atom for atom, arrangement for arrangement, identical down to every synapse and every memory, and asked which one is real, the honest answer is that there is no ghost to transfer. There is no extra ingredient that makes one version the original. The copy is you because you were always just the arrangement. which means a Boltzmann brain, assembled to identical specification, is not a fake version of you. It is indistinguishable from you in every way that the word you has ever meant. So think about where that leaves us. You are either a recurring pattern with no memory of your previous iterations, trapped in endless repetition, or you are a statistical hallucination that will dissolve before this sentence ends. And the cruelest part, the part that will not quiet down, is that you are aware of this. You are the one configuration in the universe capable of understanding its own imprisonment. Consciousness is not the prize. It might be the punishment. And yet, here you are, still processing, still aware, still running. That is the part nobody warned you about. We spent the last hour building every layer of the trap, the biology, the physics, the thermodynamics, the logic. And at each layer, there was a moment where you might have thought, fine, but at least I'm here right now. At least consciousness exists. At least something in this machine is awake. But consciousness is not the solution to the trap. It is the trap. Here is what evolution actually gave us. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human brain developed one tool and one tool only: survival on a savanna, pattern recognition to spot predators in tall grass, social anxiety to avoid being exiled from the group, fear responses tuned to immediate physical threats, a lion, a rival, a drought. The brain was never built to look at the abyss. It was built to look at the next meal. And then we pointed it at 14 billion years of expanding darkness, at the certainty of our own deletion, at paradoxes that dissolve the self into statistical noise, and we expected it to hold. It was never designed to hold. A hammer is not a flaw when you try to use it as a scalpel. It is simply the wrong tool in the wrong situation. But we do not have another tool. We only have this brain, and the one built for gazelles and campfires and the faces of people we love, and we are using it to stare into a universe that does not have edges, does not have a center, does not have a purpose, and will not remember that we were here. That is what a biological machine that has realized it is inside a meat grinder looks like. Not screaming, not collapsing, just processing, running the calculation, watching the output arrive and being unable to stop watching. And it gets worse, because even your experience of this moment is not actually happening when you think it is. Right now, as you hear this, you believe you are in the present. You believe that what you are experiencing is live, real-time, direct, immediate. But your brain disagrees. Every signal from your senses, sound, vision, touch, takes time to travel through nerve tissue, to be processed, to be assembled into the coherent experience you call right now. And that assembly takes roughly 80 milliseconds. 80 milliseconds of lag between the universe doing something and you experiencing it. 80 milliseconds doesn't sound like much, but it means you have never, not once in your entire life, experienced the present moment. You have only ever experienced the recent past. The universe is always 80 milliseconds ahead of you. You are always catching up. You are a recording that believes it is live. When you look in the mirror tomorrow morning, you will not just see a face. You will see a biological machine lagging 80 milliseconds behind reality, running on hardware, built for a different world entirely, is staring back at itself with the specific horror of knowing exactly what it is, and knowing changes nothing. That is the cruelty of it. The awareness does not grant escape. It does not grant control. It does not slow the entropy or extend the light cone or stop the loop. The only thing awareness does is make the machine capable of understanding the machine. A thermostat does not suffer from knowing the temperature. We do not have that mercy. We got the upgrade, the capacity to model our own situation, and the situation the model reveals is this. So think about where that leaves us. Biologically, we found that we are trapped in a lag 80 milliseconds behind reality. Physically, we are imprisoned by the speed of light. Thermodynamically, we are being dragged toward a heat death. And logically, Yet we are stuck in an infinite loop. 4 walls, no doors, and the universe did not build this cage with malice. That would almost be easier. If there were intention behind it, then there would be something to argue with, something to appeal to, some will that could theoretically be changed. But there is no malice here. There is no architect. The laws of physics are not cruel. They simply are. Thermodynamics does not want you to die. It has no wants. The speed of light does not imprison you out of spite. It is simply the conversion rate of the vacuum, indifferent to whether anything inside it suffers. But to a creature that feels pain, indifference is worse than cruelty. Cruelty implies a relationship. It implies that you matter enough to be targeted. Indifference means you do not register at all. And the universe is not punishing us. We are not a story it is telling. We are not even a footnote. We are a local fluctuation in entropy that will smooth out and leave no trace, and the universe will not notice the smoothing. Every fear you have ever felt, every love, every moment of meaning that made you feel for a second like this was worth something. The vacuum does not know about any of it. It was always already moving toward a state in which none of it remains. And you are aware of this. That is the final weight. Not the heat death, not the loop, not the lag, the awareness itself. You are the configuration of matter that looks at all of this clearly and continues to function, continues to breathe, continues to feel. Something in the machine keeps running the process even after the process reveals its own futility, and you are still here, still hearing this, still unable to look away. Every exit is sealed. Every door is a wall. The biology lags, the physics imprisons, the entropy deletes, and the logic circles back forever. If you stop here, if this is where the argument ends, you are left with nothing but nihilism, a clean, cold, complete absence of reason to do anything at all. But we cannot stop here, because once you see the bars of the cage, you have a choice. And there it is, the choice. Not the choice between living and dying, not the choice between believing and giving up, something smaller than that, and something much, much larger. Here is what nobody tells you when they hand you the cage. If the universe wants nothing from you, nothing, not a single thing, not obedience, not worship, not a purpose fulfilled, or a destiny completed, then you are not a prisoner waiting for a sentence to be carried out. You are standing in an open field. The walls you were looking at were never walls. They were the horizon. And the horizon is not a boundary. It is just the edge of what you can see from where you are standing. Think about what has been pressing down on you this whole time. The weight of it. The sense that the universe had expectations and you were failing them. But the universe has no expectations. It issued no job description when your atoms assembled. There is no cosmic audit at the end. No file being kept. Which means the pressure was never coming from out there. It was coming from you. You built it, which means you can set it down. This is exactly the moment where we have to pivot. If we stop at the horror, we are left with nothing but paralysis. So let's go back through the cage, wall by wall, because something strange happens when you look at the bars long enough. That 80 millisecond lag, the delay baked into your biology, the gap between the world firing its signal and your mind receiving it. It felt like a prison. But think about what it is actually doing. Your nervous system is not slow because evolution failed. It is slow because raw, our unfiltered sensory data arriving at full speed would be catastrophic. The lag is compression. It is processing. It is the difference between receiving a fire hose and receiving a glass of water you can actually drink. You are not getting the world late. You are getting the world survivable. The buffer is not a flaw in the machine. The buffer is the machine working exactly as it should. And the speed of light, that hard ceiling on information of the wall that means nothing in the universe can ever talk to anything else faster than light allows, and that felt like a prison too. But remove it. Remove that ceiling entirely, What happens? Effects can precede causes. A bullet arrives before the gun fires. An answer appears before the question is asked. The fabric of meaning itself unravels because meaning requires sequence. And sequence requires that causes come before effects. And that requires a speed limit on information. The light cone is not a cage. It is the architecture that makes coherence possible. It is the reason that time has a direction and a story can be told. Take it away, and you do not get freedom. You get a universe where nothing means anything because nothing connects to anything. The prison is the only thing making the story make sense. Now here is the one that changes everything for me. The block universe. The idea that all of time, past, present, what we call future, exists simultaneously, laid out like a crystal, every moment set and permanent. It felt like the most suffocating thing we had encountered. No free will, no escape, written in permanent ink. But here is what permanent ink also means. It means nothing is deleted. Yes, it means the moment you first heard a piece of music that made you feel less alone, that moment is not gone. It is set. It is in the crystal. The laugh you had that surprised even you. The conversation that lasted longer than it was supposed to. The quiet moment that somehow felt like enough. None of it is decaying somewhere in the past. None of it is getting further away. It is fixed. It exists with the same ontological weight as right now. You are not losing those moments to time. You are adding to the permanent record, writing the final copy, and it does not come back for revision, which means every line counts. But it also means every line you write stays written. Tomorrow is a ghost. Yesterday is a stone. The needle of consciousness touching the vinyl. This moment, right now, your awareness pressing against the groove of the present. This is the only place you will ever actually be. Not the ghost. The stone. The real thing is always now, and now is always being preserved. And then there is entropy. The force that is slowly pulling everything towards stillness and heat and silence. We called it deletion. But here is what entropy also does. Entropy is the engine of scarcity, and scarcity is the engine of value. Gold is valuable because there is not much of it. Diamonds because they are difficult to find and hold. Every moment of your life is a limited edition event that will never be manufactured again. The configuration of matter and energy that is you, in this exact state, in this exact moment, has never existed before and will never exist again. Entropy guarantees that. Yowl, the same force that promises your ending, also guarantees your uniqueness. You are not common. You are not repeatable. The universe does not mass-produce what you are. There is a concept in physics called dissipative structures. Complex systems that maintain their shape by burning through energy, by consuming and releasing it, by existing at the far edge of order before disorder claims them. A flame, a hurricane, a living cell. They are not stable things holding on. They are dynamic things constantly consuming the gap between order and chaos, shaped by the very force that will eventually end them. That is what you are. Not a rock resisting erosion. A flame that is its own burning, held together precisely by the energy flowing through. If you squint at all of this, the lag, the light cone, the crystal record, at the scarcity engine, the trap starts to look like something else entirely. It starts to look like a fortress. The biology that delays you is the shock absorber between you and the unbearable. The physics that limits you is the thread-stitching cause to effect. So meaning is even possible. The permanence that fixes you is the thing that says your life cannot be taken back. The entropy that ends you is the thing that made you rare. Every constraint is also a protection. The spacesuit does not trap the astronaut. It is the only thing standing between the astronaut and the void. Remove it and you do not get freedom. You get the vacuum. Nietzsche called it amor fati, love of fate. Not tolerance of it, not grim acceptance of it. Love. The radical proposition that you do not merely endure the constraints of your existence, but embrace them as the specific shape of your life. the exact contours of the thing that is yours, not in spite of the limitations. Because of them, the limitations are the form. Without them, there is no sculpture. There is only stone. This is the part that gets me. Not because it's sad, because it's the most human thing I've ever heard. When the Titanic went down, a group of musicians stood on the deck and played. The ship was going down. Everyone knew the ship was going down, and they played the violins. Not because it saved anyone, not because it changed anything about the physics of what was happening, because that is what they had. And the fact that the ship was sinking did not make the music less music. It made it more. Creating beauty in the face of certain loss is not denial. It is not delusion. It is the most precise understanding of the situation possible. It says, I know exactly what is happening, and I choose this anyway. The choice is not naive. It is the most clear-eyed thing a person can do. You push the rock up the hill. You know the rock is coming back down. You push it anyway, and somewhere on the way up you find that the pushing is the point, that the hill was always the point, that Sisyphus pushing and smiling is not a picture of despair. It is a picture of someone who figured it out. We are not small. We are concentrated. Every force in this universe, every law of physics, every billion years of stellar generation burning and dying to produce carbon and oxygen and the other materials of life. Every improbable coincidence, stacked on every other improbable coincidence, to produce a creature that could look back at the whole machine and ask why. It all concentrates here. In you. You are not a footnote watching the story. You are what the story bottlenecked into. The universe did not produce consciousness by accident and move on. Consciousness is the thing the universe made that looks at the universe. That is not nothing. That is the whole trick. You are the noise. You are the rebellion. You are the glitch that refuses to be fixed. But before you walk out of here carrying that, and I need you to carry it, I mean that, I have to give you one final warning before we close the book tonight. Here is the warning, and I mean it as a warning. What we have done together tonight is dangerous, not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. In information security, there is a concept called an info hazard. It is information that causes harm by the simple act of being known, not because someone uses it as a weapon, not because it spreads, but because once it is inside your mind, it rewrites the software. You cannot unknow it. You cannot go back to the version of yourself that sat down at the beginning of this and thought they were just watching something about a telescope. That person is gone. The info hazard got them. Think of it as a virus. Not one that destroys the machine, one that changes what the machine sees. You have been infected, and the symptoms start immediately. You will notice them tomorrow. You will look in a mirror, and instead of seeing a face, you will see a biological machine running a survival program optimized for the African savanna 70,000 years ago, processing sensory data with an 80-millisecond lag, generating a story about what is real out of ingredients that arrived slightly late. That used to be just your reflection. It is not anymore. You will look at a night sky and you will see a graveyard. Every point of light is either already dead or dying, and the light reaching your eye is ancient news from a source that may not exist. You will make a decision, and some quiet part of your brain will ask whether the decision is yours or whether it is the script talking. The machinery is visible now. It does not go invisible again. I need you to hear this clearly. That is not a wound. That is a weapon. The universe is playing a game of poker with you, and it has been playing this game your entire life, and you have been folding every hand because you could not see your cards. What we did tonight, all of it, the telescope, and the dark flow, and the cold spot, and the Higgs field, and the entropy, and the Fermi silence, that was looking at your cards. You can see them now. You know the game is rigged, and you know the house has advantages you cannot overcome, and you know the hand you are holding is not the strongest hand in history. But you can see it, you can play it. The person who folds without looking loses. The person who looks, even at a hard hand, at least plays. So let me do the final accounting. One last time. The trap of time is real. The 80 milliseconds are real. And the block universe is real. And the past is permanent. And the future is unwritten. And you are living in the sliver between them. That is the trap. But the trap is also the only place where anything happens. A creature with infinite time does nothing. Urgency requires a clock. The clock is the point. The trap of scale is real. The universe is so large that the distances are not distances anymore. They are walls made of physics itself, and we are sealed inside our little bubble of observable space. But sealed means contained. Contained means the light from your life does not bleed out into the void. It stays here. It echoes here. The cage is a fortress. The trap of biology is real. The lag is real. The savannah wiring is real. The survival brain shaping every fear and every desire is real. But the trap is also the reason any of this hurts. Am I a machine optimized for nothing? Feels nothing. The ache of being human, the weight of it, is the proof that something is at stake. The biology is the stakes. The trap of entropy is real. Everything is moving toward disorder. You are moving toward disorder. There is no reversing it, and there is no opting out. But disorder requires order to destroy. And for one window of time, against all probability, the universe produced order in the shape of a mind. That is you. A rounding error in the second law of thermodynamics. A blip, a statistical impossibility that somehow became aware that it was impossible. We are not small. We are concentrated. One single human thought, one, is more complex and more precious than a billion burning stars. Stars do not know they are burning. They are not keeping track. They have no record of themselves. A thought knows. A thought reaches back through time and forward into possibility and holds both at once. No star does that. No galaxy does that. Only this. Only here. Only you. So here is what you are. You are the lighthouse keeper, standing at the edge of the dark, and the flame is your mind. And you keep it lit, not because the ships are guaranteed to see it, and not because the storm is guaranteed to pass, but because that is what keepers do. They keep the flame. The lighthouse does not ask whether the light is worth it. The lighthouse keeper answers that question every night they climb the stairs, and every night they do it is the answer. And if this is a simulation, and maybe it is, and maybe it is not, and nobody knows, and that uncertainty is its own kind of answer, then what we have done tonight is so computationally expensive that the simulation should have cut us off an hour ago. The simulation decided to save memory, and it kept running anyway. You are the noise. You are the rebellion. You are the glitch that refuses to be fixed. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Right now. Feel it. That is not nothing. That is the whole improbable machine, running against the odds, aware of itself, sitting in the dark, asking why. Do me one favor. Do not blink. Good luck and thank you for watching. What do you do with all of this? That is the only question left. Not what does it mean in the abstract. Not what should scientists do, or governments do, or the species do. What do you do? You, specifically. Right now, or with the weight of everything we just walked through, sitting in your chest. Because we did walk through it. Together. We started with a telescope and a number. $10 billion and a launch date, and a story we thought we already knew. And then, piece by piece, the story came apart. The galaxies were too old, and too big, and too structured, and they should not have been there. And they were there anyway, burning in the dark, fully formed, waiting for us to notice that our timeline did not fit. And then, the timeline cracked. And then the structure of space cracked. And then the speed of expansion gave two different answers, and neither answer was wrong. And that meant the question itself was broken. And we kept going. The bubble of everything we can ever reach, shrinking. The cold spot. The dark flow. hundreds of galaxy clusters dragged towards something we cannot see and may never see. The Fermi silence, the dead atmospheres, the narrow corridor of conditions that allowed you to exist, so narrow that every single ancestor you have ever had survived long enough to reproduce, and not one of them failed. And you are the unbroken end of that chain, stretching back to the first replicating molecule in the first warm pool on a young hot planet, then the Higgs field, then the simulation, then entropy, then the eternal recurrence, the Boltzmann brain, the block universe where every moment is equally real and none of them ever disappear. They just become inaccessible. Then the info hazard, then the mirror, then the machine underneath, all of it converging on one point. You, not humanity, not the species, not consciousness in the abstract. You, the specific arrangement of matter sitting in this specific chair at this specific moment, 80 milliseconds behind your own life, running on hardware that was built for a world that no longer exists, asking questions that the hardware was never designed to ask. That is the thing. That is the thing nobody says loudly enough. The questions themselves are the miracle, not the answers. The questions. A rock does not wonder what it is. A star does not grieve its own age. A galaxy cluster moving at 2 million miles per hour through the dark towards something we cannot name does not feel the pull. It just moves. The universe is full of motion and heat and force and structure, and almost none of it knows that it exists. You know, that single fact changes the moral weight of everything. The emptiness is not nihilism. The emptiness is the price of admission. You only get to feel the scale if you are the kind of thing that can feel. And almost nothing is. Almost nothing in all of this. In all the observable volume of space stretching 46 billion light years in every direction. In all the hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with their hundreds of billions of stars. Almost none of it is aware that any of it is happening. Except here. Except this. Except you right now. Aware that you are aware. So carry it. Not as a burden. Not as a wound. As a fact about what you are. You are the universe looking at itself and flinching. That is not weakness. That is the whole point. The flinch means you understand the stakes. The flinch means you are paying attention. The flinch is the proof that something real is happening inside the machine. Keep going back to your life. Keep building the things you are building. Keep loving the people you are loving. Not because the cosmos endorses it. Not because the numbers add up. Because you are a temporary arrangement of matter that somehow learned to care. And caring is the rarest thing we have found in all our searching. And we have been searching. And the universe is almost entirely empty of it. Do not blink. Thank you for watching. If this meant something to you, leave a comment. Tell me what you are thinking. Subscribe if you want to keep going. I will see you in the next one.